Right, so in this video I'm going to have a look at BIMDAS. In other words, the order in which you do certain operations like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and so on. So I'm going to do some examples, and I'm going to do examples of questions where you've got integers, and I'm going to do examples where you've got rational numbers or fractions. So let's have a look at what BIMDAS means first of all. So we have this word here, if you like, called BIMDAS, B-I-M-D-A-S, and the B here stands for brackets. The I here stands for indices or powers or square roots or cubed roots or any type of roots really. M is for multiplying, D is for division, and A stands for adding, and S stands for subtraction. Now there are a number of different versions of this here, but they all basically mean the same thing. You've got BIMDAS, BOMDAS, BIRDMAS, BODMAS, but they're all effectively the same thing. This is the version I'm going to use here anyway. So let's have a look at an example of what we're talking about here. So I'm going to look at some integers, integer questions. So let's have a look at this one here. Let's take 2, and we're going to multiply that by 2, and we're going to multiply that by 3 plus 4, and then we're going to add 5, and we're going to multiply the 5 by 3 minus 2. So when you see something like this, you've really got to start thinking about BIMDAS. You've got to know, what am I going to do first, what am I going to do second, what am I going to do third. You can't just start from the left hand side and start multiplying and adding, and then adding, multiplying and subtracting. You've got to do the operations, the adding, subtracting, multiplying and so on, in a certain order. So the first thing you see here is we've got a B, and that stands for brackets. So what we've got to do first here is what's in the brackets. So you don't do anything with this 2 here, and we're going to do what's inside the brackets here. You don't do anything with the 5 here. I'm just going to do what's inside these brackets here. So let's take this bracket here. We've got a 3 plus a 4. That's going to give me 7. We've got a 3 minus 2. That's going to give me 1. So all I've done on the first line here is what's inside the brackets. Let's go on again. Now you start with, you do BIMDAS again in the second line. So you start with B for brackets here, and you ask yourself, are there any brackets here? Well, there are brackets here, but there's nothing inside the brackets that I can do anything with. I've got a 7 in here, that's as simple as I can get. I have a 1 in here, that's as simple as this one can get. So we can't do anything with B here, with B for brackets. So you move on to the next one, which is I for indices or powers or roots. There are no powers or roots here, so I can ignore that one. The next one is M for multiplying. Well, we have some multiplying here. We've got this 2 times 7, and we've got a 5 times 1. Remember, when you've got a 2 stuck to a bracket here, it just means you're multiplying whatever's inside the bracket. It's just 2 times whatever's inside the bracket here. So anyway, we've got this 2 times 7, so that's 14. We're not doing the adding yet, so I'm just going to write that down again. And we've got a 5 times 1, which is 5. Now we've just got adding left here. So I'm just going to add 14 to 5, and that gives me 19. So that's fine. If I do these in the wrong order, if I don't use BIMDAS, I probably won't get 19. So you must follow BIMDAS when you're doing these kind of things. That's the first one done. Let's have a look at another one then. Okay, so let's look at 49, and we're going to divide. We're going to divide minus 3, minus 4, and we'll stick in a square here as well. Okay, so again we're going to use BIMDAS, or some version of that anyway. So let's start. Now we're going to look at B here for brackets. So we look and see, are there any brackets? Well, there's a bracket here, 2 brackets here, and inside the brackets we got something we can do. So I'm not going to do anything with the 49. I'm not going to do anything with this 49. I am going to do something with what's inside the brackets, and I'm not going to do anything with that square here yet. Okay, so let's do the brackets here first. I have a minus 3 and a minus 4. So minus 3 minus 4 is just going to be minus 7. Minus 3 minus 4 is minus 7. So let's continue on then. We're going to do the third line here. So let's see, we have B for brackets. There are no brackets here that I can do anything with. There's a -7 here. It's as simple as I can get, so I'm just going to leave that. I is for powers now, or indices. There is a power here. There's a 2 up here. I have to square whatever's inside this bracket. So I am going to do that. There's a 49 divided by here. I'm not going to do anything with that. So I got to square this -7. Now, you've got to think carefully here what exactly you're going to do. This square here means, this 2 up here means you've got to multiply everything inside this bracket by itself twice. So it's going to be -7 multiplied by -7. This is what squaring means. This is your -7 squared. Okay? So what do we do when we multiply this out? Well, this minus is multiplied by this minus here. So the two signs are the same. So our answer is going to be plus. And we have a 7 then multiplied by 7. So that gives me 49. It's a very, very common mistake here just to see this minus and immediately write down minus in your answer. There isn't a minus in your answer here because we're squaring this minus. So you're multiplying minus by itself. It's like signs, or the signs are the same rather, so we get a plus here. So here we just have 49, or plus 49 if you like. Okay, so what do we end up with? So 49 divided by 49 is just 1. That's it. Okay, so let's have a look at another one. I'll just come back to this idea here in a few minutes. I'll just do one more example of these integers. So let's take 2 and we're multiplying 5 minus 8, and we'll add 3 and we'll take 7 minus 11. So I'm going to do this one here. So again I'm going to do BIMDAS of course, and I'm going to take brackets first. So I'm only going to do what's inside the brackets. I'm not going to do anything with anything else. So 5 minus 8 here will give me -3. 7 minus 11 will give me -4. Okay, so that's these are the brackets done. There's nothing else inside the brackets I can do. So I move on to I, which is powers or indices. So there are no powers or indices, so I do nothing. I can't do anything there. M is multiplying. Now I am multiplying this 2 by this -3, and I am multiplying this +3 by this -4. So I got to do that here. So multiply 2 by -3. Well, I have a plus here and a minus here that I'm multiplying. So those signs are not the same. So my answer is minus. So multiply a plus by a minus, you get a minus. The signs are different, you get a minus. Okay, so 2 multiplied by 3 then will give me 6. Again, I'm multiplying a +3 by a -4. So I'm going to get minus here. And 3 times 4, 12. So here now I'm adding or subtracting. So I'm doing these two here if you like. So I'm subtracting in fact. So it's -6 minus 12. That brings me down to -18 on the number line. Okay, so my answer is -18 in this case. Now I just want to come back to something here that I was talking about, this -7 squared. So I just want to have a look at that again down here, just for a couple of seconds. So we had a -7 and we squared it and we got +49. Now, if you take, for example, -1 and you square it, you will get, that's really, you're squaring everything in the bracket, you're multiplying everything in the bracket by itself. So it's -1 times -1, signs are the same, so it's plus, and then 1 times 1 is 1. Now if you take -1 and you cube it, so in other words, you multiply it by itself 3 times, what happens here? Well, if you take these two here, for example, we've already seen that when you multiply -1 by -1, you get +1. So this just becomes 1. And now we also have to multiply that by this remaining -1 here. So what's that? We got a +1 times a -1. That's -1. So when you cube the -1, you get -1. When you square the -1, you get +1. And that will continue on because you'll find that you'll see that this is an even number here, and this is an odd number. And you'll find, in fact, that if you take -1 and you raise it to any power that's even, so for example, 44 is an even number, the sign will be plus. And 1 multiplied by itself 44 times is 1. If you take -1 and you raise it to any power that's odd, so for example 49 is an odd number, this here will be a minus, as we saw over here. This is an odd number, 3. We got a minus, so it will be minus here, and the 1 multiplied by itself 49 times is 1. So that's it. So that works for any number really. So if you take, for example, -3 and you raise it to the power of 2, you'll get a plus. But this is an even number, so you get a plus because minus times minus is plus, so that'll be 9. If you take -3 and cube it, for example, this is an odd number here, so this minus will become minus. And a 3 3s 9, 3 9s 27. You'll get 27 there. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. Now, just one last thing I just want to mention quickly. We saw that if you take -1 and you square it, that's -1 times -1. You take everything inside the bracket and you multiply it by itself twice, and our answer will be +1. If, on the other hand, you take -1 and you square it without the brackets, you're squaring the 1 here, but you're not squaring the minus. So the minus will remain. You're not doing anything with the minus. You're just squaring the 1 here. So your answer will be -1 here in this case. So the brackets here are very important. So you got to think about what's happening here when we have brackets or when we haven't brackets in this case. Okay, so let's move on then. So that's really integers and BIMDAS or BIMDAS or BIRDMAS or whatever version you're using. I want to turn now to fractions and do some examples of these with fractions in them. So let's take a fairly straightforward example first. Let's take a half. Let's take a quarter, and we'll multiply 2 over 9. And we'll subtract, let's say, 5 over 6, and let's stick in a square here as well. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, and again we're going to use BIMDAS. We got to decide what to do first. So when we look through this here, we first of all ask ourselves, are there any brackets? Well, here's the only brackets, and inside the brackets we have a 5 6. There's nothing we can do with that. So what we're going to do here is move on to the next one, which is powers. And we see that there is a power here. So I'm going to do that. There are no other powers here. So I'm going to do nothing with this 1/4, nothing with this 2/9, nothing with the minus. I'm just going to simply square what's inside the brackets. Now you got to remember here, when you're doing fractions and you have to square it or cube it or whatever, you square the top, square the bottom, or cube the top, cube the bottom, or whatever. So in this case, we have a 5 over 6. We're squaring it. What does that mean? That really means we have to take everything inside the bracket and square it. So it's 5 over 6 times 5 over 6. So this is multiplying fractions, and I did that in another video. So you multiply the top by the top, which is 25. Multiply the bottom by the bottom, that gives me 36. So squaring this means you square the top, square the bottom. So really what you're doing is squaring 5, squaring 6. Okay, so let's put our answer in here. So we got, what did we get? 25 over 36. Okay, so now what we've got to do then is go back to our BIMDAS again. We look at B for brackets. We have brackets here, but nothing we can do with them. I for powers, no more powers left. M for multiplying. Well, we do have a multiplying here, so I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to multiply these two. I'm not going to do anything with our 25 over 36. I'm going to take away the bracket, all right, because it doesn't make any difference. So how do you multiply these two brackets here? You multiply the top by the top, the bottom by the bottom. These two fractions here, rather. So 1 times 2 is 2. 4 times 9, 4 9s, 36. So this is handy. We have a 36 as our denominator here, 36 as our denominator here. So what have we got? We've got 2 of these 36s, and we're subtracting 25 of these 36s. So 2 minus 25 is really what we're doing. 2 minus 25. So 2 minus 25 will bring us down to minus 23 36ths. And that's it. This is our answer here. So when you do all of this here, this is what you end up with. Okay, so let's do another one then. May run out of room here, so it might be a little bit tight. So let's see. Let's take 3 over 5, and we're going to multiply that by 15 over 27. And then we're going to add 5 over 6, and then we're going to divide 2 over 3, and let's subtract a half squared. Okay, now I just have this area here to do it in, so it's going to get a little bit tight, but let's see what we can do. Now we got to do BIMDAS again, so we got to do brackets. There are brackets here, but nothing we can do. So we're going to do powers. Powers is next. So I'm going to square this here. That's all I'm going to do on the next line. So I'm going to do nothing else. So 3 over 5 times 15 over 27 plus 5 over 6 divided by 2 over 3. I've done nothing with any of these, so I'm just going to write them down again. So square this. So you square the top, so that's 1. Square the bottom, you get 4. 2 2s are 4. Okay, so let's continue on. Now, again, we look at BIMDAS. We have no brackets, so that's fine. We have no powers left. We have, let's see, that's BI and then M for multiplying. We do have a multiplying here, so I'm going to do this bit here. So 3 times 15 will give me 45, and 5 times 27 will give me 135. I'm going to do nothing with this, 5 over 6. I'm going to do nothing with this, which is 2 over 3. I'm going to do nothing with this, which is 1 over 4. Okay, fine. Now, I'm only doing one thing at a time here, but when you get used to these, you can do 2 or 3 things at a time, just to save yourself some time. But for the moment, if you're doing these for the first time or fairly early, you know, you can just pick one thing and just do that, and write everything else down that you're not doing anything with. Okay, so I'm going to look at these fractions. This fraction here is reducible. This is reducible. If you stick that into your calculator, what you'll actually end up with is 1/3. In other words, if you multiply or divide 135 by 45, you'll get 3. So in other words, this just reduces to 1 over 3, 1/3 here. Okay, so that's fine. Now, I see I have a division here, so I'm just going to take that division. I have a 5 over 6 here, and the way we divide is we take the second fraction, which is 2 over 3, we flip it upside down, so it becomes 3 over 2, and we change the division to multiply. And then I'm going to subtract this quarter here. So this is what we need to do now. So now I have an adding, I have a multiplying, and I have a subtraction here. So I'm just going to do on the next line multiplying. Multiplying comes before adding and subtracting. So let's do that here. So I have a 1/3 here, which I'm doing nothing with. I have an adding here, which I'm doing nothing with. So I got to multiply these two fractions here. So 5 times 3 gives me 15, and 6 times 2 gives me 12. So that's fine. That's this here done. So now I have a quarter over here, so I'm just going to write that down. Now at this stage I just have adding and subtracting, and when you have adding and subtracting left, you can just work from left to right. You don't necessarily have to do the adding before the subtraction as such. So what I'm going to do is just do all of this. So I'm just going to write down, again I've done this previously, how to add and subtract fractions. So we've got to write down equivalent fractions for all of these. So I can see that I have a 3, a 12 and a 4 as my denominators. So what will they all divide into? Well, they'll all divide into 12. So I can change them all to 12ths. So what did I do to 3 to give me 12? I multiplied by 4, so multiply the top by 4 as well. 4 ones give me 4. This doesn't change, it's still 15 over 12. What did I do to 4 to give me 12? I multiplied by 3, so multiply the 1 by 3. So I end up with 3 there. So what do I end up with here? So I have 4 12ths plus 15 12ths, and then I subtract 3 of these 12ths. So 4 plus 15 is 19 12ths. 19 twelfths minus 3 twelfths gives me 16 twelfths, I think. Yeah, 16 twelfths. Okay, so this is a reducible fraction here, so I can divide by 4 anyway, so that will give me 4 over 3, I think. Is that right? Let me see. 4 into 16 is 4, 4 into 12 is 3. So that's just simply 1 and 1 over 3, 1 and 1/3 there. And that is it, really. I've run out of room anyway, so I have to stop.